Hi, this is Sarah Wallace, and this is my supervision contract revisions presentation. For this first set of revisions, I would like to talk about the state requirements in Texas for LPCs. So in my original draft, I did address what to do if my supervisee needs to cancel a supervision session, but I did not get into detail about if there were going to be multiple cancellations and the possibility of doing a marathon supervision session to where we would do just 4 hours because all of them have been canceled for the month, considering that hours cannot roll over for the month. And so what I decided to change is in the case of cancellation, supervision may be made up later in the month. However, due to time constraints, no more than 2 may be rescheduled within the month. Supervisee must understand that any more than 2 cancellations can result in loss of all hours for the month. So I just wanted to set that standard up front, and that way I don't get myself in a bind, because I know that logistically doing a marathon session of supervisions is not likely to work for me. Also, I changed some language for the LPC rules that supervisor and supervisees have to adhere to make it very clear that it's the new the Texas Behavioral Health Executive Council instead of just LPC rules or Texas rules, and that way it's clear for both supervisor and supervisee what rules we're adhering to. And also I included the American Counseling Association, ACA Code of Ethics for licensed professional counselors, as well as applicable federal laws. So for this next slide, I made some edits on my role as supervisor and in my expectations for my supervisees. And so on the first edit that I made, HIPAA-compliant web-based system is accessible to use if agreed upon by supervisor and supervisee. Supervisee understands that technology training must be completed if requested by supervisor. With all the limits being removed in technology for counseling and in supervision, that obviously opens up the doors to much more technology being used. And according to the LMFT standards, they require technology training, or else LPCs do not. So originally in my contract, I did not include this. However, whenever I started thinking about it more, I would like for my supervisees to have training in technology, and especially if they will be using counseling online, or we may be doing our supervision online. I just feel like that would be best practice. Also, for supervision notes that I take, I did note that I would be taking the notes, and that whether I stay at the agency I'm at or I leave, that they will still be in my possession, but I did not note that they would be accessible if requested by the supervisee, so I did add that. And then as far as the last 2 bullet points, I included what I expected out of supervisees as far as acting in an ethical manner, and when there's client emergencies, when there may be a need for immediate therapeutic contact. But I did not talk about my role in that. And my role as a supervisor would be to lay out guidelines and give it definitions for what those are in my supervision orientation. So I would need to explain what it is to act in an ethical manner, and in what circumstances are considered client emergencies, and when therapeutic contact is reasonably necessary to do in immediate situations. So that's something that I will go over in my orientation. So the edit that I made on the role of the supervisee section includes the number of sites that they may be getting direct and indirect hours. That has been removed from the LPC rules, meaning that there's no limit on the number of sites that an LPC associate can obtain their hours. And so originally in my contract, I did not address this, but when I was thinking about it and basically based on my own experience, whenever other LPC associates at the time, it was interns, were gaining their hours, and I know that there were ones that struggled whenever they had multiple sites. And I mean, which is very understandable because you're having to learn the policies and the procedures and their ways of documentation and paperwork and everything. And being trained completely in multiple sites and keeping up with those, I could imagine would be overwhelming. And so, just to be in alignment, I'm allowing that. However, I put this clause in here in order to address my concern. The supervisee will complete a release of information for any other supervision sites used to accumulate direct and indirect hours, as well as provide updated contact information for those sites. In the event that multiple sites lead to a cause of concern for supervisor, supervisee may be asked to reduce number of sites to a level that is deemed manageable by supervisor. Another section that I made edits are the fees section, and I just made it a little, I think, maybe more clear than it was previously. Any supervisee outside the West Pinellas CAC agency shall pay the supervisor a sum of $50 per individual supervision session, $50 per triadic supervision session, and $50 per group supervision session. Regardless of type of supervision session taking place, there's a flat fee of $50 per person per hour long session. And so, and my reasoning for this is just that each LPC associate that I would be supervising, regardless of whether the supervision was in a group or triadic or individual, I still have to keep up with each one individually. I still have to take supervision notes on each and keep up with the hours and am responsible. And so the value of, I guess, what they're getting out of supervision, I don't feel like changes, and especially because LPC associates can most certainly learn from experiences of other LPC associates. And so that's my reasoning for my fees. So for my last supervision contract edits, I'll include remediation and termination. So my original contract, I did discuss a remediation plan for supervisees, but not what would happen if they did not follow that plan. So what I included is further remediation up to termination of supervision as determined by the supervisor. So just up to my discretion, depending upon the case. For termination, Clause A, I did include a termination based on the completion of LPC licensure, but I did not include that it being posted on the Texas BHEC website. So that is an important piece to include, is that supervision cannot be complete until it is actually posted. Part C, in my original contract, I said that a lack of direct hours over a period of time, I gave the period 90 days, and that wasn't found in the LPC licensure laws. That was just my own time frame that I came up with that I felt like may be appropriate, just based upon, I know that life happens. There's pregnancies, maternity leave, health concerns, problems. There may be people that there's deaths in the family, just things happen, and that needs to take place. I was trying to decide what would be an appropriate amount of time. But what I decided to go with instead is just basically just to go along with what the LPC licensure laws are, and just a direct hours over a period of 1 month or longer if determined by the supervisor to be a cause of concern. That may be when I determine. So the cause of concern is really what I added. And all breaks must be agreed upon by supervisor and supervisee as well as documented. Licensure taking an extended period of time to acquire by supervisee be reviewed by supervisor and could potentially lead to remediation up to termination of supervision. So before I did not include this part, just because before there was a 5-year limit, and that was removed. And so, but upon reflecting on that, there may be an occasion that arises where it taking too long could be an issue. And so I did want to include that clause that if there were a problem, I wanted to be able to address that. And that is the end of my presentation.